working on a narrowly crafted protection from liability for things directly related to the coronavirus, and that will have to be a part of any package, because if we're really going to get the economy up and going again, people have to be brave enough to begin to engage in economic activity.
Oh, well, to hear Senate Majority Leader Addison Mitchell Mitch McConnell tell it, reopening the economy is simply a matter of bravery, not a matter of life or death for thousands of vulnerable Americans. Just bravery.
Lord have mercy.
On the Senate floor this week, McConnell said protecting businesses from liability. Now, so should their workers exhibit such bravery and come to work and they get sick or die, now those protections, they must be in any forthcoming legislation. And it's so vital that they're in it, it's a red line that Republicans will not cross. In other words, if you're forced to go back to work because your state lifts lockdown orders and then you get sick, well, that's on you. Signed, Mitch McConnell. Joining me now is Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, whose bipartisan bill to automatically pay federal benefits to families of first responders who died from COVID-19 unanimously passed the Senate on Thursday. Well, congratulations, Senator, on that. That's a small bit of good news. Can you explain to me how it could be that Senator McConnell, who says he won't put anything on the floor that Donald Trump doesn't like, and Trump has said that the $3 trillion from the House is dead on arrival, he's not interested in making sure that bill passes so states like New Jersey and other states can get funding to keep police and firefighters and EMTs working, but that there has to be liability for businesses. Can you explain that?
No, I can't. We had a hearing on this already in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it was made plain by many of the witnesses that this is a time that the federal government should just be putting down what the standards are, whether it's OSHA or other oversight agencies. If businesses follow those rules, they would be safe. But if they were reckless or did things to endanger their workers, they should be held accountable. But that's not the route that he's taking. It seems like he's more interested in protecting large corporations from legitimate lawsuits, or meatpacking industries where we see some of the most awful behavior and recklessness, as opposed to protecting workers who are really showing the courage of going to work and should be protected and not abused or exploited. In fact, what Nancy Pelosi in the House's bill does, which I think is really important, is actually put hazard pay there. So these so-called essential workers, it's not just a great pat on the back that we're giving them, but actually supporting them with extra pay in their paychecks.
And the Los Angeles Times wrote about Mitch McConnell's determination to make sure that there's business liability protection in the bill, and it has sparked apparently a lobbying frenzy. And here's a little bit of the Times story. Industry groups representing doctors, manufacturers, and business owners are rushing in. Generally, they're seeking a higher bar for allowing employees, customers, or patients to sue a business owner if they're exposed to or contract COVID-19 while at work. What it sounds to me like is that McConnell is very interested, and other Republicans, in forcing particularly hourly workers to go back to work even if they are at risk. And then if they get sick, they want the business owner to have no liability whatsoever. There doesn't seem to be
Shameful.
any interest. Is there any interest, if you heard from your Republican colleagues, that they want to do anything to protect the actual workers?
So, that's the frustrating thing to me, because I did hear Republican colleagues of mine talking about the CDC putting out guidelines that should be abided by businesses or OSHA standards. But that's just not being pushed by this administration or Mitch McConnell. If there are clear standards of conduct at work, then we have a base level, and if they're violated, workers should have the right to sue for their lives being put in danger by reckless behavior at work and gross endangerment.
You have a small business relief plan that 100 mayors have endorsed. You proposed this. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill with Senator Steve Dames of Montana, Patty Murray of
New revised
Washington,
2020 way of lynching.
Dave Kildee of Michigan, and Brian Fitzpatrick. So you've got a bill out there. How would you build in the best case scenario? Because I know you're very supportive of the businesses in your hometown. I've seen that firsthand, that you really support them. How would it work in your mind if a business was going to reopen, and how do you balance getting relief to them, making sure they can pay their rent and their utilities and they can operate, but also balance what happens if somebody that works for them gets sick? How would you do it?
Yeah, well, it's to me, it's not that complicated. First of all, the bill that we have focuses on those small businesses that have been elbowed out of a lot of the programs that we've already had. There is a bipartisan demand to get these community centers, these neighborhood pillar businesses that often are 3 employees, 10 employees, back up and running. And what I simply want is there to be clear standards for what we should be doing to protect workers. And businesses should be abiding by those standards. We have that already in industry. OSHA puts out clear standards. If they're violated, people then have a right to take legal action. This is not about giving corporations a pass for gross negligence. It's not about giving corporations a pass to take cheap shortcuts to endanger their workers. And so I'm a little frustrated because, there is a bipartisan desire. You have all 50 governors joining together and saying, we need help. They ask for half of $500 billion. You have mayors, as I have a press conference this week over Zoom with bipartisan mayors demanding action. You have all these people that want another bill. You have the head of the Fed just saying, Powell, that this is a time for government to be spending to stimulate the economy. So don't call this a partisan thing. Call this a Trump-McConnell thing. Because when it comes to people who actually run stuff, mayors and governors, and the Fed who's watching this
Downright
economy,
shameful.
everybody knows Congress should take action and should take action quickly. And the challenge we have right now is a president and a leader of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell,
Wickedness
who
that's
seem to
coming
not
out of
feel a
this
sense
White
of
House.
urgency, who aren't
Downright
connected to the
shameful.
pain that a lot of people are feeling and are trying to pump the brakes or push this back into the summer when I have businesses and local governments who are trying to keep firefighters and police officers employed, telling me if they try to wait until July or August, it'll be too late. Our small business will never open again. We will lay off first responders in a pandemic. That's outrageous. They're much more interested in bailing out corporations and keeping big business intact than bailing out the people who are putting their lives on the line every single day in our country. It's outrageous and unacceptable.
And you've also raised the issue of banks and unfair lending. You sent a letter to 22 CEOs of banks, including Bank of America, Capital One, Chase Citibank, and Wells Fargo. In this next bill, will there be mandates to make sure that small businesses, that minority-owned businesses get access? Because that's been an issue, too, of not getting equal access to relief funding and to the SBA loans that are being put forward by Congress.
Accountability is 3 things. Having a standard, and we have standards in America, equality of opportunity, access, having ways of measuring progress towards that standard, that's data, and then having consequences for failing to meet those standards. So my frustration with this time of virus is getting our government to actively seek the data that we can hold everybody accountable, from banks to medical institutions, and the kind of resources available to minorities is just not there. So I've been pushing everybody from the CDC to businesses and banks to collect the data so we can see if there's a discriminatory result in a lot of these programs.
Yeah, and before I let you go, Senator, I just have to get your comment on the murder of an EMT in Louisville. There's been calls now for a federal investigation. The fact that this is how we've lost a first responder, Breonna Taylor. Do you have any comment on that? Do you have any faith in the Justice Department that they'll do anything about this case?
So look, this has been a rough week. I just was with Ahmaud Arbery's mother. It hurts me because I feel like I've been having this conversation my whole life.
Far too often.
What really is troublesome is from the Department of Education that eviscerated their Civil Rights Division to the Department of Justice that had stopped doing things to hold police departments accountable and justice departments accountable. So we don't have the kind of leadership that we need on the federal level. What happened in this case screams of need for a federal investigation from our Civil Rights Division. I've been demanding it, and I will continue, because all the circumstances of that case seem to me to be just dead wrong. And the more facts that come out, the more offensive and grievous and hurtful it appears. So there should be a Civil Rights Division, a federal investigation into this. People should be held accountable. And no, we've learned from experience that you can't just leave it to local authorities who often have connections and conflicts that are just unacceptable.
Yeah,